Welcome back to Work Past the Record with me, your host, Lori, the podcast that keeps it real about getting a job and keeping a job after a record. Today, we're talking about something a lot of people skip over, and that is being actually ready to work. Not just wanting a job, not just needing money, but being prepared for what comes with showing up every day, being accountable, and staying consistent. One of the first things I want to talk about in being ready is wanting a job versus being ready for a job. A lot of people say, I need a job right now. And that's real. Bills are real. Life is real. Here's the truth. Wanting a job and being ready for a job are two different things. Being ready means you can show up every day. You can follow directions even when you don't like them. You can handle stress without walking off. Because the fastest way to end up back at square one is getting a job you are not ready to keep. Let's break that down even further. If you get a job, the most important part is showing up every day, not calling out, not coming in late, but being early and being ready to work and being enthusiastic about being there. So many people get a job, and the minute they see a few hours of sick time in their bank of earned time off, they're ready to take a day off. It's a nice beach day. They want to spend the day at the beach instead of being at work. They call out. Their significant other has a day off, or their best friend, and they call off. Being ready for a job means you show up every day. I very rarely take a sick day unless I'm really sick. So having that ethic to work is very important. You can follow directions even when you don't like them. Well, life is filled with things that we don't like to do, but have to at times. It's life. It's being an adult. It's adulting. People have a hard time with that. They are so used to being the ones that call the shots or following their own rules and so quick to want to do things their own way because they think their way is better than how that's being explained. You can't do that in a job. If someone's training you and they're telling you how it is to be done, it's because that is the tried and tested and true way that that job has decided the work can get done the way they want it done. So you follow them, you do what they say, you don't argue about it, follow the directions even when you don't like them. You don't need to say, well, that's a stupid way to do things. This is much easier. Just do it the way they're teaching you. Maybe down the road, as you're teaching someone else, or you can show a supervisor or a trainer, I was thinking if I tweak this and do it this way, I can be more efficient and productive. They may be okay with that. Follow the directions they give you, even if you don't like them. You can handle stress without walking out. That's another big one. Jobs are stressful. Life is stressful, but we don't walk away every time we get a little bit of stress. We face it. We do what we have to do to get the job done. We practice stress relief on the job. Maybe you're stressed out over something and you ask, can I take 5 just so I can get a breath of fresh air? And you go outside and you breathe some air and you meditate for a minute and then you go back in and you keep doing the job. Jobs are stressful. It is what it is, but we don't walk away and we don't walk off just because of a little bit of stress. We face it, we handle it, we put it behind us. The whole point of getting a job is so you don't end up back out on the streets, getting in trouble and going back to prison or going back to jail or getting arrested for the same thing you just got out for and are trying to get a job. All right, the next thing you need to talk about is the 5 real readiness checks. Let's break it down into 5 questions you need to ask yourself before you even apply for a job. Transportation. How are you getting there every day on time? Not just when things go right, but when something goes wrong. If your ride falls through, what's your backup plan? Many people with a record do not have a driver's license, so they rely on some mode of public transportation. So let's say you rely on the bus, but you know the bus consistently runs late or takes longer at some stops. What are you going to do to make sure that you get to work on time because you rely on that bus? You're going to take an earlier bus. You're going to get to the bus stop. You're going to take an earlier bus. That way, if there are any delays, you still can get to work on time. Let's say you rely on a friend to give you a ride and something happens to their vehicle or they have somebody sick. Let's say they have a child that's sick and they can't pick you up that day. Maybe they're off. Maybe they have an appointment. What is your backup plan to that? Do you have a family member that you can use as a backup plan? Do you have another friend that you can use as a backup plan? Those are all things you need to have in your head. Do you have enough money to take an Uber or a Lyft to work if you need to? Do you have money to take the bus if your friend can't get you there? And where is the bus stop in correlation to where you live? These are important things to already have in place before you apply for a job. You're not going to apply for a job that's 45 minutes to an hour away or even a half hour if you don't have a vehicle. Time and schedule. Are you ready to be somewhere on someone else's time? Early mornings, long shift, weekends, whatever the job requires. Many jobs are nights or evenings, weekends. The business is open 7 days a week. It may be open on some holidays. Are you ready to work that? Do you have open availability that's going to make an employer want to choose you over anyone else that applies for that position? It's one of the big questions that's always asked. What is your availability? Look at any job application. If you say you can only work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but the business is open Sunday through Saturday from 9 till 8, you have to be flexible with that, especially if it's a retail job or some type of entertainment, a hotel, a restaurant. Those are businesses that run at all different hours, and they don't want somebody that can only work Monday through Friday. They want you to be able to work on the weekends and the holidays where they may be busier because they have more traffic coming through the store. So think of that also when you're looking for a job. What is the schedule I want? Can I work the hours that this business is open? So maybe you're going to apply for a retail store. You go on their website or you Google them and you look at what their hours of operation are. Just look before you apply. That way you kind of have an idea. Well, these are the hours I may be scheduled for. Is it doable? Will I have a ride? Will I have transportation during that time? Childcare and responsibilities. Number 3, very important. If something comes up, do you have a plan? Employers understand life happens, but not every week. So if you have a child, we all know kids get sick. They're like little germ factories, especially when they're in school or daycares, correct? What are you going to do with that child if they're sick? You may call out the first day so you can get the child to the doctor, but you can't call out for 3 days or 5 days. You won't have a job. So do you have someone reliable, a family member, a really good friend that you trust that can come to your house and stay with your sick child so that you can work? What if daycare is closed because of a holiday, but you have to work? Do you have someone that can watch that child so you can go to work? Those are the things you need to think about. It's a big responsibility. There's a lot of single parents out there, and not everybody gets help from the child's other parent. But knowing that you have a relative or your best friend that the child knows and you know is safe being with that person, you want to have them as a backup and you want to plan that far ahead. Not the sickness, you can't, but for a holiday where maybe daycare is closed or school is not in session that day. Those are the things to think about when you're applying for a position. Mindset and attitude. Can you take direction without taking it personally? Can you handle a supervisor correcting you without shutting down and getting defensive? Constructive criticism is a part of life. My boss gives me constructive criticism, criticism, and I take it with stride. I learn from it. I apologize if I've made a mistake. I'm usually told it's no big deal, but I learn from that and know not to do that again. You have to be able to take constructive criticism. You have to be able to take direction easily. If I don't know how to do something, I am the first one that will make the call to whoever I need to call and say, how do I do this? Because I've never done this before or I'm unsure. And I will take direction from them without a problem. If someone gives me directions for something I already know, I graciously listen because you never know if they're going to add something in that you don't know. So being able to take direction without thinking, oh, they just think I'm stupid and trying to tell me. No, they're giving you direction, even if you know, listen, because as I say, there may be something in those directions that you weren't aware of before. And like I just said, being able to take constructive criticism is a big deal. So if you don't know how to do it, maybe take some little lessons on in practice how to do it. We're not always all right and we're not perfect. Consistency. Can you do the job even on the days you don't feel like it? Because that's what separates people who keep jobs from people who lose them. So maybe you work a machine at a factory and every day is the same job. And maybe some days you think this job is so mundane or it's so boring. I wish I was doing something else. But you still show up and you still do your job because you need the money. The important thing is not only showing up, but doing the job to the best of your ability, even on days you don't feel like doing it. There's days that I go into work and I think, oh, I just can't do this today because I have something else going on in my life that I need to refocus myself and get into my job. And once I start, I'm fine. But we all have those days. We're human. We don't want to work every day. There's days I'd rather be hanging out on the beach or back home with my kids, seeing my grandchildren. It's life, but we have a job to do and we need to show up. And sometimes it is mundane and sometimes it is boring because it's so repetitive. But if you consistently show up and you do the best you can and are very productive, if you think a supervisor isn't going to see that, you're wrong. They are, because you're going to be the one that they keep. You're going to be the one they want to promote, as opposed to the other guy that doesn't show up or shows up and half works and half lazy and wants to be social more than productive and does a lousy job at whatever they're doing. They don't put any effort into it. That's the person that's going to lose their job. You're the person that's going to keep your job. So those are just some tips to think about when you're doing research for jobs. Is this the job for me? The honest reality. Here's something nobody says enough. If you're not ready yet, that doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've got a chance to fix things before it costs you an opportunity. So, what does that mean? Just because you think you're ready to work or you need to work doesn't mean that you're really ready. You may think everything that I've given you so far, and you may forget that when you get the job, people are watching you. They're checking to see, are you reliable? Are you consistent? Can they count on you? But those are the things you need to ask yourself while you're searching for a job. Am I a reliable employee? Am I going to show up on time? Do I have my transportation all set? Can I work this schedule? Do I have backup plans? Is my attitude that of I can go in and I can do anything and constructive criticism is not going to bother me? You have a chance to fix things if you're not ready. If you can't say yes to those things, then maybe you wait a little bit longer before you look for a job and you work on those things that you're having difficulty with. And then you apply for a job when you think you've got it down. When you know in your heart, I can say yes to these items, I'm ready to work. You don't want to lose an opportunity because you're not ready. Are you consistent? So, are you going to show up every day? Are you going to put your best foot forward every time you walk in? It's the same thing as I said. Can you do the job even on the days you don't feel like it? That's consistency. Can they count on you? They schedule you 8 to 4 or 7 to 3. You're going to show up. They can count on you. That's what an employer is looking for. And that's what lets you know if you are ready to work. So, can they count on you? And especially with a record, you don't always get a second chance at a first impression. A second chance at a first impression. Your first impression is the minute you walk through the door for an interview. That is your first impression with an employer. When you get the job, I guess there is more than one. When you get the job, you have to make a first impression with whoever your supervisor is. So you only get one chance at a first impression. It's from the minute you walk through the door in an interview and then when you walk in to actually start working. So when you have a record and your employer knows this, because we've already discussed where you're going to tell them that you have a record, you sometimes have to work harder to make that first impression. They want to see that you're not going to slip backwards to that person you were before, the one that you've already told them in an interview you've grown from and no longer are, right? So you've sat in an interview and this is what happened. And I own that, but here is where I am now. That's your first impression. So you can't tell them that in an interview and then show up looking like garbage and not being consistent, and they cannot count on you. The first impression is important. You want to show up ready to work, nice clean uniform, well kept, ready to go, good attitude. Teach me. That's what you want to do. That's when you know that you are ready. That's the honest reality of being ready to work. If you can't do that, then you are not ready and you have not failed. It means that you just need to work on those things so that you can be ready. So here's a little takeaway on all this. Before you apply anywhere this week, ask yourself those 5 questions and answer them honestly. If there's a gap, don't ignore it, fix it. That's how you don't just get hired, you stay hired. So, in other words, you have to be ready. You have to be able to honestly ask yourself these questions and say, yeah, I'm ready to work. So many times I interview people that tell me they're ready to work and they start with me and they're calling out by day 2 or day 3. That tells me they're not really ready to work. Then I start thinking, oh, maybe it's just they haven't worked in a long time and they're just trying to get acclimated again. Then they show up a few more days and then they call out again. Or they'll show up for the whole first 2 weeks with me and then I put them in the actual job, and they're calling out every other week. They have to go to the hospital. They have a sick kid. Their car broke down. The bus is not running today. My friend was supposed to give me a ride and can't, and now I can't get to the bus stop. It's too far from my house. Those are all things that I look at as that person is not ready to work. Sometimes I get nervous with someone, not that has really a criminal record, but that is in recovery, let's say. If they have not had consistent recovery or been in recovery for a period of time, most of the time they are not ready to work. Why? Because they have so many other things going on. They need to go to meetings. They need to see their doctor for medication. They need to meet with their sponsor. They need to go to mental health appointments. All of that should take place first, and then looking for a job should be second to that. So, wanting a job, but being ready for a job, as I said in the beginning, are 2 different things. Everybody needs to work. Everybody has bills to pay. Everybody has, life. Sometimes you have probation costs to pay or restitution. And they'll push you and say you have to get a job within this many weeks. Or you go into a recovery house and they say after the first 2 weeks of getting used to how the house works, you need to get a job. It's okay. People push you because they want you to be successful, and I think they fear that you will slide back to what you were when you first got your record. The reality is, if you're not ready to work, you have to step up and say, listen, I'm not ready yet. I need to get this, and this set so I can do this, and this. Do not apply for jobs just because someone's forcing you to apply for a job because they're telling you you need to work. You apply for a job because in your heart you know that you are ready to work. As I said, we all have bills, we all need money, but wanting to work and being ready to work are 2 very, very different things. So if you can ask yourself all the questions that we went over, am I ready to work? Do I have transportation and a backup? Can I work the schedule that they need me to work? Can I make that time work? Do I have responsibilities that I need to make sure can be taken care of should something happen so I don't miss days out of work? Can I take directions and not take it personally? Can I have a positive attitude when I'm there? Can I be consistent? Can I be somebody that they can count on? Am I reliable? Only you can answer those questions. Nobody else can. And if you can say yes to those questions, then you're ready to work. And you look for a job that fits those questions. You don't look at these questions and then say, I'm going to work a job that requires me to work overnights if you know that you have a hard time staying awake after 10 o'clock. Why would you take an 11 to 7 shift? Holds true for why would you take a 7 to 3 shift or an 8 to 4 if you know that you're a late sleeper and you cannot get up that early in the morning to be at work. Then you may want to take the 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. job if that works for you, or may want to take the 1 to 9 job. These are things you have to think about as you're applying for jobs or looking for jobs, I should say, like doing the research before you apply. So if there is a gap, don't ignore it, fix it. What does that mean? It means if in any of those 5 questions you can't truthfully or honestly answer that, yes, I am reliable, or yes, I am consistent, or yes, they can count on me, take a step back, do not apply, and say, how am I going to fix that? How am I going to make myself more reliable? How am I going to make myself more consistent? How am I going to make it so an employer can count on me? Fix that problem. That's how you don't just get hired, you stay hired. So it's easy to get a job. It's keeping the job that is the hard part. Because if you mess up on one of those other things and you start calling out all the time and your work is not the quality they want, or you can't take constructive criticism, you're always ready to go to war with someone, you won't keep that job for very long. So ask yourself those questions this week before you apply anywhere. Ask yourself those questions and answer them honestly. And that will tell you, am I ready to work? And if you are, I wish you the best of luck. And I know that you will do well. And I know that you will be a good employee because you're going to keep listening to my podcast for skills and tips. And hopefully, you will get something out of this. And I hope that today, listening to this podcast made you think, am I ready to work? Not, I need to work, but am I ready to work? Because that's what it's all about, being ready to be a good employee for an employer that's willing to give you a second chance, even though you have a record. This is Work Past the Record, where we don't just talk about getting opportunities, we talk about keeping them. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.